Hi everyone, and welcome to today's session. Today we're focusing on the improvement meeting, which is a simple way to kickstart the wider advisory conversations with your clients. My name is Charles Clark, and I'm joined by Natalie Eady. Hi, Nat.
Hi everyone.
So as we kick off, I think it's worth just touching on who we are, the Boma and the GAP, just in case you're not familiar with us. So the GAP's business development system, in combination with Boma's digital marketing platform, empowers accountants and bookkeepers to enhance client relationships, drive growth, and maximize your practice's marketing efficiency. Now, we've got a pretty jam-packed agenda today, and we'll be taking you through some of the pre-work that you did, and then taking a deeper dive into exactly what an improvement meeting is, how to position it and market it to your audience, obviously some tips on delivering a great and valuable session to your clients, and then obviously how to follow it up and leverage the meeting into high value discussions and obviously future work. But look, first off, let's just unpack a little bit of your pre-work. And interestingly, the significant majority here, quite similar to Australia and New Zealand, although you did it was definitely a bigger majority in the UK, approach us as a bit of an ad hoc activity in terms of running those conversations or improvement, discussing improvement strategies with clients. What I did find interesting is that obviously, annual reviews and regular monthly and quarterly meetings still played a big part, but the biggest discrepancy compared to Australia and New Zealand was that 9% of you said that you would never broach this subject with your clients. Now, obviously, that's neither good nor bad particularly, but just an interesting aside, that number was 1% when we ran the same session earlier today, our time in New Zealand and Australia. Now, what we did find is that even though there was quite a gap there, about almost exactly the same number of you answered no to the question, have you run a paid improvement meeting in your firm? So 89% in the UK and 88% in Australia and New Zealand. So what we see here is a really big opportunity, but obviously there might be a reason why that number, 89%, is there. And that's why we asked the last question. So, what are your advisory marketing challenges? And what we've done here is give you both a selection of quotes, and you might recognize maybe your quote if you're there, but we've also graphed in a pie graph sort of the 4 key or main barriers that you mentioned. So first off, the traditional pain points of time and knowing where and how to get started accounted for 38%, while the major barrier that you fed back to us was the challenge of shifting the client's perception around advisory services, the value they can offer, and that also they are a paid for service, not something that are just included within the work that you already do for them or compliance work. Now, lastly, knowing how to price and deliver and show value for this sort of work was also a concern. So the feedback we got both from you, but also from your colleagues in Australia and New Zealand, is that there's quite a lot of uncertainty about how to get started in this space. So look, I think the best thing now to do is to hand over to Nat. She's going to take us through what the improvement meeting is in a bit more detail, and then we can start thinking about how we go about promoting it.
Yeah, awesome. Can you see my screen, Charles?
Yes, I can.
That's great. So yeah, a lot of really interesting points raised there. And I think it's important to start with that conversation around the fact that we know it's challenging for your clients to understand the value of advisory services. And most likely they've never ever engaged with an accountant in this way before. They simply haven't considered that you could be there to help them in this way. So I think that's why the improvement meeting is such a simple step to help people either start their advisory journey or kind of bridge the gap between their compliance offering and those higher level advisory services that are perhaps not enough of their clients are kind of picking up on yet. So the reason it's so simple and easy to begin with is it's a low cost, one-off, low risk meeting for your client. So it's a pretty low investment for them, and it's going to enable them to uncover some immediate opportunities to improve their situation. And while you go through that one-off meeting with them, you're able to demonstrate the value of working more closely together. So it's a great way for clients to try before they buy, and it acts as the first paid step on the advisory value ladder. It's also a really low risk investment for you as the advisor, because you're going to charge a reasonable amount for it, and you're going to learn and enjoy that process. And if it doesn't eventuate into the client moving up the value ladder and uptaking one of those higher level advisory services, then you've still covered your costs as you go. So it's a great investment for you if you're leading your firm, or also if you're getting team members in your firm to upskill and begin delivering advisory. So what do you talk about in an improvement meeting? So usually there's a specific topic to focus on where you can educate and set some specific improvement strategies for the client. And the meeting should follow a structured process to ensure that you really maximize your time together. So this improvement meeting concept is very simple, and I think that's where the value lies. It simply acts as a stepping stone to more high value recurring advisory work. And you will have heard me talk about the value ladder, and this is a marketing concept that's used to describe the relationship between a company and a customer or client. So on this particular diagram here, you'll see that the value or the strength of the relationship goes up aligned with the cost of the services that you're providing. So essentially, the more value the company adds to the client, the more willing the client is to spend more money growing the relationship and building trust, and moving that client further up the ladder to the highest value services, and also kind of turning them into a bit of a raving advocate for your advisory work or your company. So I'll give you a simple example of a value ladder which shows the potential steps before and after an improvement meeting. Firstly, you're going to offer something free of value, which might be in the form of an educational webinar or some really great marketing content that's going to position you as an expert and open that dialogue with your client or potential client. Now, off the back of that, they're going to commit to a paid meeting with you for 60 to 90 minutes, which you should charge a decent hourly rate for. And at the end of that meeting, which is essentially an accountability meeting following the same format of an ongoing coaching program, at the end of that meeting, you're just going to position the value of the next rung on the ladder, which in this case might be to keep having those ongoing meetings and actually get that client involved in a recurring accountability coaching program. And beyond that, and by the way, you know, this could be monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly, and also this step could be a completely different rung on your advisory ladder. Really, it's about sitting down as a team and understanding or defining what your advisory ladder is, so that you're clear what services you're going to try and generate conceptual agreement for in the improvement meeting, and what you're going to nurture your clients with following that if that doesn't quite eventuate the first time round. So from here, a likely next step is an annual business plan, because the plan is going to ensure that you're providing accountability on achieving the right goals and implementing the right improvement strategies as you keep meeting with that client. And then if we move up further, the fifth step could be what we call the GAP advisory trifecta, which is the ongoing accountability coaching, the annual business plan, and some kind of annual forecasting as well. Now, we believe those are simply best practice in any business. And so it's about building that courage, that confidence for yourself, but also for your client, to get to that point where they recognize the value in spending that much time with you and that much, you know, of an investment with you in your advisory offering. Now, of course, you could go further. You could have more steps on your advisory ladder. You could have some really, you know, deeper services. You could have some niche services. There's a lot more you could do here. And it's important to note that all of these particular services, we have all the content and systems for these in the GAP app. So whether you're a seasoned advisory deliverer or you're just starting out, The improvement meeting is a very effective tool to bridge the gap between your current compliance offering and those advisory services that you're really looking to drive at the higher end. It's also going to help you build some confidence, or perhaps help you build the confidence of some of your team members. And of course, there's so many other places you can go from here, but we recognise that that first paid step, the improvement meeting, making that not such a big step, making it really clear what that's about and keeping it really simple is going to keep it nice and broad brush to be, attractive to many customers or clients. So when it comes to positioning the improvement meeting, it's important to consider who's going to benefit from it. So as I said, we believe this is really broad brush service. It might be appropriate for any number of clients who are interested in taking a little step towards advisory. Perhaps they're not ready to take the leap. Perhaps they're too busy to take the leap. This could be a good stepping stone for them. It also could be a great process or system to follow when you get one of those client distress calls where, you're hearing that the issue is X, but actually perhaps you want to go a little bit deeper, get some pre-work out to them, get that information back and sit down in the meeting and actually unpack the issue properly. And of course, that means you're not going to experience too much scope creep because you'll be able to control the process a bit more and make sure you charge for that. So as with all advisory services, it's important that you're really clear on the value of this particular meeting before you start your marketing. So up on screen, I've got the cash flow and profit improvement meeting. We've clearly defined points of value for this particular meeting in all of our marketing, and that all sits in the Boma platform as well. So in this particular improvement meeting, there's 4 simple points of value. Firstly, we're going to teach the client the difference between cash flow and profit. We're going to help them understand the key cash flow drivers and the cash conversion cycle in their business. We're also going to help them understand the impact small changes can have on their profit and cash flow. And we're going to identify some actions that they can take to improve their cash flow and profit. So when you boil it down like that, regardless of the existing knowledge, level within your clients, I think those 4 points or benefits are going to be reasonably attractive to many. Now, when we think about the opportunities to sell the improvement meeting, when is going to be a good time to kind of, openly market it? I think there are 3 really obvious ways to do that. Firstly, at the annual accounts review meeting, and our meeting process in the gap and the resources that support that all make it reasonably natural to weave a conversation in around an improvement meeting into that process. And the other 2 are really marketing focused. And firstly, you could send a targeted email campaign, keep it really simple, talk about the service, have a call to action so that your clients can reach out to uptake that service. Or you could go a bit deeper and you could deliver a really considered educational webinar. It's going to have a slightly bigger campaign around it, and you're going to be able to attract prospects and clients, and you'll be able to really nurture people beyond that and kind of hopefully get a bit of an on-ramp to your sales pipeline from that. So Charles, perhaps you can show us how we can use gap content in Boma for the last 2 options.
Sure, thanks, Nat. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Yep.
Great, so we're now in the Boma platform. We're in the library where we've got a huge range of content, and we're specifically in the gap library. And you can see here in the middle is the cash flow and profit improvement meeting. So if I click into that, you'll be able to see here, we've got everything we need to send out a really fantastic and concise email to your target audience. And it's really simple to do. Click on Deliver and Campaign, and we'll choose email. The naming convention is just for your internal purposes only, so it won't be seen by anyone who gets the email. Once you're happy with the name, you can go through and start thinking about some key elements of this simple email campaign. So the first one is to think about, okay, I've got my audience, my database uploaded into Boma. Who do I want to send it out to? And so we've got 3 options. And the first one is to say, okay, maybe this is applicable to everyone that you have. It's all your clients, all your prospects and you want to send it to them all. However, maybe it's more relevant if you think about them as segments, so specific groups. And you can see on the right-hand side here, we've got tags. And so these are, specific tags that you can assign to each of your contacts, and a really useful way for you to, I suppose, group and segment, so that when you come to filter using tags, you could say, fantastic, I want to send this particular email out to my retail clients. And you can see here, we've now only targeting people who have that retail tag next to their name. So let's save and close. And now we get to go on and select a template. And the thing with Boma is that because all the content is in the library and it's combined with the email, you can basically go and choose what you want the email to look like. And you can see here, we've got the full article. If I click on that, that's basically going to inject the content into your email template. And so all the formatting and spacing and inserting the images done for you. You really, all you need to have to do is to personalize it and maybe make sure that you're happy with the way it looks. So personalization is really, really easy. And this could be as simple as adding a merge tag. And a merge tag will basically add the first name of all your contacts. So always a nice idea to personalize it. Now, as you read down here, you can see that the email is set up really well. And this is off the back of Boma's GAP's best practice knowledge and understanding of what is going to really hit the mark for this sort of conversation. So if you did want to do anything, obviously you can, but I'm going to keep it simple today and just do a sign off. Excuse me, I'm having trouble typing. It's late at night here. So add a sign off, and then always best practice, as we will talk about in a few minutes, is to go in and add a call to action button. So we'll just keep it simple for tonight. So contact us. And basically you're wanting them to then take an action, and they can contact you in a number of different ways. Perhaps you send them through to a page on your website where they can book a time in to have this meeting. Perhaps they go to a service page on your website where you talk about the service. You could even send them to, direct them to make a call. So you'll know in what ways your clients, your prospects like to communicate, and then you can choose the appropriate method here. Once you're happy with it, click save and close. And then really all that's left to do is make sure that you're happy with the subject line, and you can see the GAP already has a subject line in here for you. You can edit that if you want to, but I wouldn't, because it's really straightforward and concise. You can send yourself or a colleague a test email, and when you're happy to send it, just click schedule delivery, and then you can send it out immediately. So that's all it takes to send a really simple email campaign. As I said, you can customize it if you want, but equally, if you want to just use the sort of best practice content that Boma has, that GAP has, then that's a great way to do it as well. Now, the other option that Nat mentioned is obviously to send out a webinar. And the nice thing is that in obviously the GAP and in Boma, you have all the templates you need to send out all the invitation emails for the webinar, as well as follow-ups. And obviously in the GAP portal itself, you have all the notes and slides that Nat will talk about in a minute. Now, the reason why a webinar is so good is that although it is, it's more work than an email, it's a nice option because you get to be in front of, a selection of your clients and prospects, and you're able to showcase the value and the benefits that you're able to deliver to them. And the nice thing from their perspective is that it's very little for them to engage with you. So it won't cost them anything other than a little bit of their time, and they can choose to engage with you at their own pace. They can ask questions or not as they like. And the last nice thing for you is that you're leveraging the technology to connect not just one-to-one, but one-to-many, which, as we know, you guys are obviously all very busy. So, whenever you sort of can find something like this to sort of short circuit that process and sort of increase your engagement, then I definitely take it. So Nat, shall I hand back over to you for, we can talk about how to nurture. the leads from
Sure.
these webinars.
How's that?
Perfect. Cool. So, once you've obviously sent out, the email, or you've run a webinar in particular, you will have some, leads or some attendees, especially if it's a webinar, you will have people who have registered. And, the key thing following that webinar is to strike while the iron's hot. And we would suggest that you take that attendee report and then segment them into groups and then start following up with them based on which group you put them in. So for those who attended and answered the exit survey, they maybe requested a proposal for a service and engaged at the webinar, you need to strike while the iron is hot because these are your hot leads. And so turn that proposal around as soon as possible, definitely within 48 hours. Next, you'll have those who maybe they didn't request a proposal, but they gave the webinar a great score on the exit interview. And if you did have a questions round, like we will obviously at the end, maybe they spoke about something that it's an opportunity for you to follow up on. So again, you get to demonstrate, the value that you can deliver. So I'd call these leads warm. And again, even if they didn't necessarily ask a question, there are lots of ideas that you can follow up with them on. And Nat, do you have any thoughts or suggestions as, maybe what from the GAP content would be good here?
Yeah, so I think what we typically publish with all of our GAP webinars, and we have over 20 of those, is a couple of tools or resources or freebies that we recommend delivering depending on someone's level of engagement. So for example, we might have a guide that might document some of the concepts discussed in a webinar to kind of, I guess, recap the information that the attendees absorbed so that they can hopefully remember that, because we need to, absorb things a few times sometimes before they kind of sink in. So we might give kind of an outbound guide as a, here's some extra value, we're going to keep nurturing you kind of option. And you're just building out that goodwill and that, that perception of that you're an expert and that you're someone that they could go to if they are ready to talk further about their business. Or you could go a bit deeper, and most of our webinars also have a worksheet type of content where you'll send an email with a link for the person to actually complete some answers, so answer some questions, sorry, that relate to the topic of the webinar, that kind of take them a bit deeper as to their own baseline on the particular topic. So it might be that if you're running a webinar about cash flow management or something, there would be some pretty direct questions in that worksheet, and as part of answering those questions, they might walk away going, there's some opportunities for me here to make some improvements, or I didn't understand this question, or I didn't know what that thing was that perhaps I might need to have in my business. So that last question in that worksheet will ask, would you like further support on this topic? And that's giving you the right to engage further and unpack some of those answers with them on a one-to-one level. So it can take layers of content, and beyond the things that we, have published in our GAP webinars, there's so much other content in the Boma platform that you could use to target clients, one-to-many, or actually going on the level of a particular client with a particular piece of content, depending on what their responses were or what interactions you've had with them.
Yeah, I think that's dead right, and you'll be able to sort of segment them from their engagement levels in the webinar. You'll be able to segment them in Boma, and then you can really be specific with these sorts of content that you send out. Obviously, the Boma content is country specific, so in the UK we have everything UK based. So if there are new rules and regulations coming out, or something's come out about EV cars, or maybe it's a change in trust legislation, you can rely on the fact that there's a wide variety of topics that will pique their interest and will be right for some of your audience at some at certain times, depending on where they are and what business they're in.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. All right. Well, I might take you through to a bit more about our particular process for an improvement meeting. So let's say you've gone through the process of marketing, whether you've done an email campaign or a webinar campaign, and you've got a number of clients interested or committed to attending an improvement meeting. So I'll unpack our particular process of delivering an improvement meeting. And we've got a couple of examples in the gap detailing this kind of tried and tested process. But essentially, whatever tools you use to deliver advisory, just make sure you have a clear, defined process that's documented so you can minimize that preparation time and confidently deliver value each time. It's also going to help you leverage your team to pick up and perhaps deliver some of those improvement meetings as well. So in a nutshell, our simple process starts with providing the client with pre-work. Now that's some simple questions for them to answer digitally via an email link. And this is going to reduce the chance of that meeting being one of discovery where the flow is completely derailed by some unforeseen burning issues. It's also going to help you enable you and your client to go a bit deeper into the session, as you'll have more of a clear understanding of what their level of knowledge is on the topic and where their situation lies. And they're going to be able to, well, they already have their head in the game because they will have been answering these questions and they would have been processing that information before the meeting. So the second piece we have in our process is some clear delivery notes. These are very detailed, a number of pages. They follow a clear agenda for the session, and they start by digging into the pre-work answers. Then there's some kind of content and questions to educate on the particular topic that the meeting's about. And then you might use a tool such as a calculator to input some numbers and build on that education and start to show the impact of some small changes. Then you can use that tool to really demonstrate some opportunities for the client in their business, something a bit more specific, and give the client a bit of clarity around where they can improve. And lastly, you're going to document a mini plan of sorts, essentially just getting the client to agree to one or two strategies they can focus on in the coming months to make some improvements. And then you'll start to talk about the opportunity to meet more regularly and actually get the client involved in an accountability coaching program or some other higher level advisory service. And if the client isn't ready to commit, that's cool. There's plenty of other marketing nurturing you can do beyond that, which is likely to mean that they may end up being interested later. But I would simply diarise a follow-up to call them in a few months and actually ask how they're going with implementing those strategies. And if they're doing well, then and they've actually seen some improvements, well, that's great. And you should be able to reposition the opportunity to meet more regularly so they can make more impactful and regular improvements. And if they've failed to implement, which is also highly likely, we're all human, then you could really go back a bit deeper into the benefits of accountability. And that being accountable to a coach is going to be the biggest influencer of actually achieving their goals or implementing those strategies. So I thought we could recap this process with a specific improvement meeting in mind. And this is our most popular, which is the cash flow and profit improvement meeting, also fondly known as the CPIM. And that also starts with some targeted pre-work. So here is the first section of questions that the client will ask in the pre-work. They're more general kind of best practice. It's going to help you see the client's baseline understanding and you know whether there's some obvious opportunities right up front to help them. Then the questions go a bit deeper into specific cash flow and profit struggles and opportunities. So you'll have some clarity as to where you should add value before you go into the session. So you'll start to get an understanding. Then we have the detailed delivery notes, which start by outlining a real the high level focus of the meeting. So how to prepare, might be 15 to 30 minutes of preparation, and this is the content that you should review and download from our app. It gives you a bit of clarity on what to focus on in the meeting, and the delivery notes go right through the causes of poor cash flow, and you're going to probably stick with one of those and go a bit deeper into some of the strategies that will improve that particular cause of poor cash flow. And then at the end, the client outcome should be pretty clear. They're going to get PDF documenting cash conversion cycle. You're going to get some outputs from a calculator showing where they could make some improvements, and meeting minutes documenting the 1 or 2 strategies that you recommend they start with. So then during the session, what do I follow you? Oh, here we go, the agenda. So we go deep into the agenda next, the delivery notes, segments, all of the different sections that you're going to actually kind of unpack during the session. There's framing questions and commentary that's going to help you discuss these items, educate on some of them, and actually extract the right information to go down the right path with picking some real low-hanging fruit for the improvement strategies. And then from there, you're going to go into a tool. It's called the Cash Flow and Profit Improvement Calculator, which has 2 sheets. It's basically an Excel spreadsheet. It's got 2 sheets in it. One is focusing specifically on cash flow and the other profit separately, but it is going to subtly demonstrate some of the KPIs that impact both, and you're going to help your client understand perhaps where some of their opportunities lie. So then you pull some levers on the spreadsheet to demonstrate the impact on cash and profit of making 1 or 2 improvements, and then the delivery notes will support you to come up with some relevant strategies that are going to help them improve or actually move the needle on that one or two KPIs or areas. And so once you've documented that kind of mini plan of 1 to 2 strategies, you'll be able to close out the session after discussing, you know, the opportunity to work with you more closely on an ongoing basis. And then after that, you'll actually provide them a guide to cash flow management, which is going to use pictures and words and very little accountanese to recap some of the concepts you touched on during the session around cash conversion cycle, the 7 ways to grow your business, and the 7 key causes of poor cash flow, so that they get to take that away and actually continue learning in that stuff. And it might be that the next time, you know, you catch up with them, whether they commit to a coaching session after that, or whether you call them up to see how they're going, that they refer back to that and they're starting to think about some of those other opportunities that lie in their business. So if we think about the meeting, Charles, and obviously it's really important that we ask permission to check in with them later to see how they're going, and really make sure we diarise that and prioritise that follow-up, because that's probably where the opportunity is going to convert. But how can we keep nurturing clients who have come to an improvement meeting but might not be ready to commit yet, to keep kind of keeping them warm so we can move them up that value ladder?
Thanks, Nat. Look, a couple of key principles or sort of key steps here before we get into the sort of the nurturing side of things. So remember to follow the BAM-FAM principle. So if if at all possible, book in your next client engagement before the end of the previous meeting. That may or may not be possible. Irrespective of whether that is possible, if you have had a meeting, make sure to always share those meeting minutes and make clear any actions, especially those that sit the client. Now, this may actually lead to additional conversations down the track about, how good it was that you held them accountable, which might lead to a coaching discussion. But in terms of that nurturing, here is really where, content marketing and educational marketing comes into play. So think about the channels that you as a business own. It's your social media, your website, i.e. your blog posts, your email, so email newsletters, email updates. And here you can really take advantage of the fact that you have obviously their email contact details. Ideally you will have asked them to follow you on maybe one of your social media channels, maybe LinkedIn or Facebook. And so, when you do publish content out via these channels, they're hopefully going to see it. Now, the great thing is that with obviously the GAP content and Boma's content, you're always going to have something to post, something that's timely and something that's relevant. Now, this doesn't mean that you shouldn't And you shouldn't include content that you create yourself, whether it's kind of what you've been up to or an event that you've been attending with some interesting insights that might be relevant to your followers. The sky's the limit in terms of what you might choose to share. A couple of key principles in terms of marketing of any sort is, be consistent and be regular in your efforts. And the point here is that I'm not saying that this equals for everyone, 10 touch points a month, 3 emails and 7 social posts. It's what you as a business or you as the principal, think is achievable for you and your team. And this might be 1 to 2 emails and a month and 1 to 2 social posts. So as long as you're consistent, that's a great place to start. And the point of all of this, as Nat sort of prefaced a few minutes ago, is that you want to stay top of mind for these people, and you want to be continuing to educate them and continue to demonstrate your expertise and the value that you can deliver, so that the next time, maybe you have a meeting or a check-in a few months down the track, or maybe they sign up to a future webinar that you run, they have already begun to, have that feeling that you might be the person or the firm who can, take them on that journey or join them on the journey, as they grow their business. So Nat, I think this is, you're going to talk about decisions mindset.
Yeah, I think this is a good mindset to share just briefly, just talking about the consistent and constant approach to marketing. And this is just one of the many mindsets we have in the GAP portal that you can provide to your clients, but it's also equally relevant in your own business. This particular mindset, the decisions mindset, is all about the importance of taking small action to improve, build self-belief, confidence, and trust. And that if you just do small steps regularly, you may not feel the impact of those immediately, but over time that momentum really will grow. So that happens both in a marketing capacity, but if you think about your clients who are potentially attending an improvement meeting, for them taking 1 or 2 steps, 1 or 2 strategies and doing a couple of things once a week to focus on making that improvement could have a really big impact for them. And if we support them to just keep taking one more bite, to keep, implementing one more thing, that they will get some real great progress over time. And I think it's the same for advisory as an advisor, because it is a big journey starting from compliance and going to being a really, having a real great advisory offering that you're supporting a number of clients with to help them achieve mind, time, and financial freedom. But actually, it's not a leap you have to make. It's those small, incremental, tiny steps that you take on a regular basis that help you go from where you are to where you want to be. And that momentum becomes really, really big. So, over time, if it's just starting to market this improvement service, having a crack at delivering it with a number of clients, even if it's just your best clients who you know really well to begin with, taking those steps will help you get to that point where it becomes really bedded into your business. And it's something that's very natural to position with all of your clients at an annual accounts review. And this is really going to help you over time market, convert, and nurture the right type of clients who are going to drive those really high advisory outcomes. And on the whole, build a better, more engaged and loyal client base. So with that in mind, I think just a little bit more on the call to action, because it's the thing that I think lets a lot of accounting firms down sometimes.
Yeah, and I think, look, in the example that I showed you earlier, when we sent that sort of campaign from the Boma content library, and the call to action was contact us. Really, you do need to put some thought into this, because having done all the hard work in terms of thought about who the email should go to or the webinar should go to, and getting them into it, you don't want to have a sort of a vague one. So to master the call to action, we must be very clear on the value that you're going to provide the clients if they engage with us. So you must be clear on the objectives, the service options that you offer, and some here might be low cost or no cost, whether others are obviously full cost. And Obviously, Nat talked you through the value ladder there, but most of all, thinking about how they're going to solve the client's problems. So if you keep these in mind, so the value that you provide, the objectives and the service options that you offer, then you can really reverse engineer your call to action at the end of any particular email or social post or webinar that's going to achieve your desired outcome and the action that you want that reader, or ideally that client or prospective client, to take, which will be to contact you and hopefully have that conversation about, the service that you're offering.
Yeah, and it's exactly the same at the end of the improvement meeting. Ultimately, it's up to you to say, well, what are you going to do next? Do you want to work with us more closely? We think we can add a lot of value to your business. If there's something you're interested in, then let's start. And so actually being the proactive one, because sometimes, especially if you're learning all this information and you don't really know how someone can help, you sit in a state of inertia and you kind of want something, but you don't know what you want or how to ask for it. And on that note, there's a couple of questions I think that have popped through.
Yeah, so the first one, which funnily enough was the exact first question we had in Australia and New Zealand, and this is for you, Nat. So how much would the general rate be to charge for a meeting like this?
So I can't specifically give you an answer to that because I don't want to be accused of setting the price. But what I can say is absolutely you should charge a good amount for that meeting. Obviously, you need to cover your time. You're going to have to do a little bit of preparation, and quite frankly, it's going to be really easy for you to give that value back in terms of if the client, and you can demonstrate it in the calculator in some instances, if you move this, if you reduce this by X or you improve this by that, you're going to save potentially up to X. This meeting's only costing you, maybe 200 or 300 pounds, for example. So, and I only say that range because I have heard of accountants charging that. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's got to be something you're comfortable with. There has to be a fee involved. I believe they have to commit to something, and you have to feel like it's low risk that if they don't convert to something, it wasn't a massive loss leader. Yeah, so I hope that's given some food for thought on that.
Cool. We've got a couple more questions. One was an earlier one, and the question was, wouldn't it decrease the impact of the campaign? I'm imagining here that you were referring to that email campaign about that content meeting that we were sending out. So wouldn't it decrease the impact of the campaign if the same content was used by many accountants? So maybe, Nat, should we both take a stab at this one?
Yeah. Well, I could
kick off first
quickly by saying, first thing is I don't think many people are doing that, and I think that is partly the opportunity. But secondly, obviously the opportunity to customize anything, whether it's what you call the meeting, how you define the value of the meeting, or something as simple as the image associated with the email, because actually what people are going to remember is probably the image over the content. But maybe you can talk to some of the other points that are raised around that too, Charles, like, how many people are on multiple accounting firm databases, for example.
Yeah, and look, we've definitely seen this. So it's often a question that people, when they first trial Boma, they ask it, and then they realize that, look, while accountants love to follow other accountants, because look, it's a very social and sort of relationship-based industry. Every accountant that I work with or know follows at least 10 or 15 accountants. Businesses and individuals out there don't. They're focused on their business, on their life, and if they have an accountant, and if they're lucky, that accountant may actually be proactive and be active on social media or email, but the vast majority aren't, and the vast majority of people don't follow, multiple accountants. I think the other thing to say there is that the number of people that I have heard of who switch accountants is because they found another accountant who was being proactive and send them information that they thought would be relevant. So I suppose there's the question of, do I not do anything because I'm afraid that I might be doing something similar to what other people are doing, and I leave my clients hanging in the wind? Or do I realize that actually it's about my clients' needs how can I serve them best, what's going to give them value. In this case, it's education, it's information, it's the latest updates on anything that you think, as an advisor, as an accountant, is going to help them in their business. Then I think really that's the perspective that I would look at it from, and that's definitely the most successful accountants that we've seen really customer/client centric, and they're really thinking about how they can serve their needs, and that kind of for them is the guiding light in terms of the sorts of content that they are happy to promote and send out to them.
Yeah, it's definitely a valid point to raise, but I agree. I think the more people go through this process, the more they realize that their clients don't expect them to come up with the concept of cash flow and profit improvement, or the fact that the annual accounts review exists. It's kind of similar. They just are so stoked to have someone who's actually thinking about them and their business needs. Yeah, so the next question, do you need to have a Boma subscription to have any marketing or email content? Yeah, and so to have it in the platform, absolutely, and all of our premium content lives there, because it doesn't make sense for us to develop it in two different systems, especially because everyone needs a platform to send it out from anyway. So in a nutshell, yes, you do need to have a Boma subscription to access our premium content, but also the benefit of being a Boma subscriber is you actually get all sorts of other content that the Gap aren't particularly interested in, because our lane really is advisory. And as an example, you may not be aware, but in New Zealand recently we had some really, really horrific floods, the worst we've ever had, quite catastrophic in some parts of New Zealand. And Boma were able to release a whole lot of information for our accounting firms who were, in some cases, without power or internet for several weeks, so that they could get comms out en masse to all of their clients who were really freaking out about potentially having lost their entire livelihoods, their houses. They needed to know how to access business disruption insurance and all sorts of other things. So Boma had all sorts of stuff out there on that they were able to run with really quickly.
And I'm actually just sharing, just very, very quickly, because I know we're coming to the end, but I'm just sharing the content library, the UK content library, and you can see here a whole range of different pieces of content, everything from R&D, tax relief, tax planning, back to basics, capital allowances. We obviously have the spring budget in there, shareholding exemptions. So the content's updated every week, and we'll obviously let you know if you're a user, when all the latest content comes out. But I suppose what I'm sort of backing up in terms of what Nat said is that there's a huge range of content in here that really complements the GAP's advisory focused content, enables you to really have a great balance of educational content that goes along with the advisory content. And for you as the accountant, if you're thinking about really growing that advisory sort of element within your business, having the combination of those two different types of content, I think is super valuable. And actually, Nat, do you want to just take back control and show that last quote that we have?
Yeah, good idea.
So this is a quote that one of a GAP member and Boma user in New Zealand, this was her answer to the initial question that you all answered, which is, what are your advisory marketing challenges? And she said, I'm using Boma, and obviously she's using the GAP, so marketing is not a problem. So I think if you're thinking, do I have the time, the expertise, all those challenges that you sort of reported back on that third or fourth slide, definitely if you have the GAP and you have Boma, then your route into advisory is much more streamlined and simple than maybe you had appreciated it could be.
Yeah, that's awesome. So in terms of next steps, just to wrap up quickly, obviously, if you're not a Boma or a GAP subscriber, we'd love to have you. You're welcome to take a trial or book a demo. And if you are a GAP and a Boma subscriber, just remember, if you haven't got that unlock code from us so that you can access all of our premium advisory content in the Boma platform, please reach out. It always surprises me how many people aren't aware of that. So please do. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thanks everyone for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Hope you enjoy the webinar. Take care.